Nova Scotia. It's trying to be. The sun has been out. It's gone behind the clouds a couple times. So the way that we're going to be running it today is we've got a couple of videos to show. We're going to say hello to everybody on the keyboard. Then after a couple of videos, we're going to stop and say actually hello to everybody. Then we're going to watch question period. Then we're going to watch a couple more videos and catch up with everybody at the end of the show. It should be a pretty fun day. We have some fun material. The show should be a really good time. So let's jump in first. This is Andrew Scheer. You guys know this bad boy. He's from Saskatchewan. He's been in Parliament since 2004, and he's got a lot of interesting messages to share. Let's jump right in.
To talk about the next leader of the Liberal Party. Mark Carbon Tax Carney has been out on the elitist speaking circuit. He's been unveiling his philosophies and his beliefs and his approach to government, but only to a select group of Liberal insiders. He's not actually talking to Canadians. He's talking to the Liberal donor base, the Liberal activist base, the little club of elites in Canada who want to run your life for you.
We can't meet our ultimate objectives, which is to get to net zero, unless we do not just have a cap on emissions, but those emissions are brought effectively to zero.
So he's not really unpacking for Canadians what he would do when he takes over from Justin Trudeau. But what we do know about his beliefs are already very concerning. You see, he loves the carbon tax. The carbon tax that has driven up the cost of everything, made your fuel, home heating, and groceries more expensive. Mark Carney loves that. He also loves to talk down Canada's oil and gas sector. He badmouths it all around the world. He even calls for government policy to leave our natural resources in the ground.
Maybe up as much as half of oil reserves, proven reserves, need to stay in the ground if we're going to get to where we are.
Which obviously would have a devastating effect on the hundreds and thousands of Canadian men and women who work each and every day in that sector.
What's in the interest, the public interest first and foremost, very low emission, scope 1, scope 2, hydrocarbon production.
And here's the scary thing about Mark Carney. You see, as he attacks the Canadian men and women who work in our country's natural resource sector, he is actually the chair of Brookfield Asset Management. Now, what does Brookfield Asset Management do? They invest in oil and gas projects. The only trouble is, not here in Canada. Brookfield is part of a consortium of financial institutions that have taken a 49% stake in the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company's gas infrastructure. They're also big investors in the East-West pipeline in India, which carries gas from the country's southeast to Gujarat in the west. A $2 billion stake representing 90% of that project. Mark Carney wants to take over Justin Trudeau's job. So he has an obligation to come clean with Canadians. What is he going to do with the carbon tax? How much new deficit and debt is he going to rack up? How much higher would inflation and interest rates go if Mark Carney takes over from Justin Trudeau? Now, carbon tax Carney and the other Liberal elitists, they like to travel around the world playing with people's lives. They like to sit in their ivory towers and make rules and plans for the rest of us to follow, while they never have to face the harsh consequences of their terrible policies. This already shows that he's going to follow in the same steps as Justin Trudeau. Rules for everyone else while they get to live their protected lifestyles. Well, the very least he can do is come clean with Canadians. Show up at committee, answer questions, and be honest with the people of this country about what he would do when he takes over from Justin Trudeau. Tomorrow, Conservatives will move a motion at Finance Committee calling on Mark Carney to come and testify and be accountable for his positions and his policies. So watch tomorrow. The NDP have a choice. They can either vote with Conservatives for maximum transparency and accountability, or they will vote once again to cover for Justin Trudeau and protect him and his successor from scrutiny from Canadians.
All right, gang, the next piece we're going to drop into is about where the Conservatives are in the polls and everything. We're still probably about 10 minutes out from question period. So we'll into the next video.
Well, to the budget now as 2 weeks on, and the ideas outlined in the Liberal plan seem to be failing to catch any fire. Liberal numbers are still mired in the low 20s, despite the government's attempt to secure the youth vote with their promise to make the economy more fair for every generation, and despite the government's promises to make life affordable for everyone with their focus on housing. Here is the latest analysis from 338 Canada. Based on available polls, 338 says Conservatives are at 42% support, the Liberals are at 24%, New Democrats sit at 18%, the Bloc are at 8%, and the Greens are at 4%. Well, for more, polls analyst Philippe Fournier joins us right now. He's the editor-in-chief of 338 Canada. Philippe, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Michael.
Now, as I said, the budget seems to be failing to catch any fire. Talk to us about what Canadians are actually saying about the Liberal plan.
Well, here's the problem with the Liberal plan, because Canadians are not saying much about it. Even though there was a rollout for 2 to 3 weeks prior to the budget, the numbers barely have moved. I follow the numbers on a daily and weekly basis. And at the start of April, we had the Conservatives with a lead of about 15 to 17 points. Now it's 18 points. So not only did the trend did not reverse itself, it seems to be even accentuated. And so, of course, it's a bit early to see the direct effect of the budget in the electorate, but so far it's not a good news for the Trudeau team for sure.
Okay, not good news, and from the numbers I see, not even amongst the Gen Z and millennials they are trying to target. So from what you have seen or shared there, it might not surprise the government, because apparently Justin Trudeau did tell his team that Liberal numbers would not improve until sometime next year if the interest rates are down and if people are feeling better with their bank accounts. You know, I'm wondering, when you look historically at polls, is that enough to pull the Liberals out of this 16-point deficit behind Conservatives?
Well, the state of the economy, it is no surprise that it often is correlated with the state of a government. However, this aging government, 9 years in, close to a decade with this Liberal government, and the economy is in a bad shape. Inflation is still high, even though it's coming back down, but the effects are still being felt by many Canadians. When you promise that perhaps the interest rate, which the government doesn't control, will come down and that will help our numbers, this could be a bit of wishful thinking. It's not just a few months trend. Now we're almost 1 year into this lead for the Conservatives, this double-digit lead that is spread throughout the country, and that's another problem for the Liberals. It's not just one region or two; it's basically everywhere. And even in Quebec, where the Liberals have fared well in past years, now they're in the mid-20s at best.
Okay, now you call it wishful thinking, perhaps wishful thinking, but you know, the Liberal argument also hinges on this idea that Canadians may be tired of Trudeau, but they don't necessarily love Pierre Poilievre. Does that still hold true, though? You know, Pierre Poilievre has gone through this image overhaul. His party has been running these ads. Is Pierre Poilievre becoming a better selling point for his party?
Well, he has for sure managed to coalesce his party behind him, which is something that Mr. O'Toole, for instance, never could do during his reign as a Conservative leader. When we look at the numbers, we see right now the Conservatives do have their coalition, their winning coalition for a government win next year. And so, I mean, in hockey terms, you could say the Conservatives could play the trap. They have their winning coalition. They can just wait it out and see what's going on in the heads of Liberals for the next year, but they don't need to win over new voters. They're at 40, 42, 43% nationally, according to the polls. That's enough for a win, especially with a very unpopular prime minister and an NDP that's going nowhere, basically.
Okay, well, you say the NDP, and I also want to ask you about that party, because as we know, the Liberals and the New Democrats, they do have this supply and confidence agreement. Despite that, we see the NDP leader not giving immediate thumbs up to the budget. You know, why is Mr. Singh doing that? When you look at the numbers, why is he publicly so hesitant about this budget?
That is a very good question, Michael. I must say I am very careful to not tread on other people's terrain. I'm a polls guy, and when I look at the numbers, I see absolutely no leverage for the NDP. The NDP, half of their caucus is in British Columbia, And the latest polls that we saw out of BC, the federal polls that we see out of BC, the Conservatives could win as much as 45 or 50% of the vote, which would decimate the NDP caucus. And to compensate for those projected loss in British Columbia, there's no sign in the prairies, in Ontario, in Atlantic Canada, or in Quebec that the NDP could recover. And so this strategy for Mr. Singh, I'm guessing it's like bluffing at poker, but electorally, if you look at a purely numbered stance, there's no way that the NDP could gain anything out of that. But we'll see what they decide to do.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it will actually hurt his image to kind of be playing this card time and again.
It's possible. Mr. Singh's numbers have taken a hit in recent months, but they're still lukewarm, I would say. Mr. Singh has favorables and unfavorables that are relatively at the same level, but also he's not judged at the same level as Monsieur Trudeau or Monsieur Poilievre. Sometimes a third-party leader will have good numbers because he or she is not a threat to the status quo. There's no indication that there's an orange wave coming with Mr. Singh in the numbers that we see right now.
Okay. Well, Philippe, always appreciate the conversation. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Michael.
And that's Philippe Fournier.
All right, gang, so that's pretty interesting to hear. I think we all kind of know what they're talking about, like we knew that already, so not a lot that we learned right there. What's up next? Let's see if we've got stream source for question period, and we do. So oh my goodness, gang. So this is the period of time that we're going to be saying hello to everybody. I'd like to say hello to Patty, Sheila. There are so many people. Lightning Rod, what's up? Clint, good day, sir. Pickles, what's going on? Jack Wilson, good day, sir. I saw a few new people in the room. T.O., what's up? S.W., good day. Jojo, my friend, what's up? Patriot. Is Silvio in the room yet? Hey, Silvio, if you are. Helena, what's going on? There are a lot of people here today. Jose, good to see you. True Blue, my brother, what's up? So many people, guys. Two Flips, what's up, my man? I never want to leave anybody out, but Red Rose, good day. Snowing in the mountains, is it? It's not too bad here in Nova Scotia. It's mild at least, but overcast. Who else do we have? I think we've got just about everybody. Did we get Raz? What's up? Calamaru, good day, fellas. Yeah, so we should be just about ready to drop right in. Did I say hi, True Blue, my man? Sorry, there's a lot of names in a short period of time. But I do like this part where we get to greet everybody, but now it is time for question period, and we're going to drop into that. So let's get this going.
Earlier this month and will only continue to go up. Given his inflationary spending that drives up the cost of everything and keeps interest rates high, it is no wonder that Canadians are poorer. He needs to axe the tax on farmers and food by passing Bill C-234 in its original form. Canadians need relief, and sadly they won't get it from this Prime Minister who simply isn't worth the cost.
The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the leading cause of death for children in British Columbia is overdose. Overdose accounts for more deaths in BC than homicides, suicides, accidents, and natural disease combined. Since 2016, over 42,000 Canadians have tragically lost their lives due to drug overdose. After 9 years, this NDP Liberal government's extremist drug policies have literally turned our neighborhoods into war zones, and statistics have tripled. Yet, unbelievably, they want to go even further and make cocaine, meth, heroin, crack, and fentanyl legal. Hard drugs are being used in playgrounds, parks, coffee shops, and even hospitals. David Eby's NDP have finally admitted that this Prime Minister's extremist drug policies have utterly failed, leaving ruined lives and grieving families in its wake. This Prime Minister must end his failed drug experiment today, or better yet, step aside and let a common sense conservative government fund treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home.
L'honorable député d'Alfred.
Guys, something I'm working on is not talking over the politicians, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that. When the translators are up, I figure the game is open. We've got the closed captions running there, so talking over the politicians, talking over the translators. Hello, Serena. How are you today? I just like saying hello to people.
Friends and neighbors, join in the fight against this devastating disease. Mr. Speaker, in the battle against cancer, every story is a poignant reminder of our common struggle. Every minute counts, and every act has an impact. Hope for a cure is a life buoy we all cling to. Let's get involved with conviction so our future can be cancer-free.
Nina, I love you, sis.
Bravo.
The honourable member from Timmins, James Bay.
Here we
The
go,
homelessness
Charlie
crisis
Angus.
in Northern Ontario has become a social disaster. Municipalities, agencies, healthcare systems are stretched to the breaking point. And yet this Liberal government is telling frontline agencies to get ready for massive cuts. The Reaching Home program is an essential lifeline for northern communities, and yet the government is telling Cochrane District, which includes Timmins, to get ready for a 52% cut in funding. Sault Ste. Marie is facing 60% cuts, while Sudbury and Nipissing will get whacked with a 70% cut. This will devastate our region and leave vulnerable people at serious risk. In Budget 2024, the Liberals bragged about how much money they will invest in housing and the homeless, but nice words won't keep people safe. In Northern Ontario, they're ignoring calls from municipalities for clarity. This isn't good enough. So people in the North are asking their Liberal MPs a simple question. Will they fight to reverse the cuts and ensure that more funding is brought to the table to fight the nightmare of homelessness in Northern Ontario?
The honourable member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the remarkable contribution of one of my predecessors today, the member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles, bloc member, the Honourable Gilles A. Perron. When I decided to run, Gilles told me, look, if you don't wear out a pair of shoes in the campaign, you don't deserve to be elected. And on the night of your victory, make the most of it, because the next day you're right back on the campaign trail. For over 11 years, Gilles wore out his shoes, meeting his constituents. His greatest political contribution was that, thanks to him, PTSD has finally been recognized among veterans. We're talking about a historic moment for the people who defended our democracy. As you draw your last breath, I promise to honor your political legacy, Gilles, in the service of the invisible wounded. For Rivière-des-Mille-Îles, I will still wear out my shoes, thinking of you. Gilles, we love you.
The honourable member from Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
After 9 years, the NDP Liberal government is not worth the drugs, disorder, death, and destruction. In BC, more people are dying as taxpayer-funded deadly drugs flood the streets. Kids' playgrounds are littered with needles and crack pipes, and it is impossible for law enforcement to do their job and keep communities safe. A year after the Prime Minister made crack, heroin, fentanyl, meth, and other drugs legal in BC, a record 2,500 British Columbians lost their lives to addiction. Last year, the former Minister of Addictions assured us they would end this deadly experiment if public health and safety indicators were not met. Both are failing. And BC's NDP Premier is now pleading with the Prime Minister to rescue them from this failed policy. Yet the Minister of Addiction refuses immediate action. Now the Prime Minister wants to expand his failed policy of deadly drugs to Canada's largest city, Toronto, despite opposition from the Premier. How many more Canadians must die before the NDP Liberals will finally put an end to this failed drug legalization policy?
The honourable member from Mississauga, Ehren Mills.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 promises to deliver a vision for Canada that is fairer and more affordable for every generation. In my riding of Mississauga, Ehren Mills, residents, especially younger generations, deserve a fair chance at purchasing their own home. That's why Budget 2024 proposes an ambitious plan to invest into more affordable housing initiatives to unlock 3.87 million more homes by 2031 for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 is also investing $1 billion into the National School Food Program to the benefit of over 400,000 Canadian children, so that no child in this country goes to school hungry. As we know, a full belly leads to sharper minds. There are so many aspects of Budget 2024 that work towards strengthening our middle class, and I encourage all members in this House to support this budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions.
Poilievre's in the House. This is great. What a surprise. He gave a big speech this morning.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister
that will be
is
showing
not
at
worth
the end
the
of
crime
this.
or the drugs. This government's radical, extreme drug policies, which are supported by the Bloc Québécois, have tripled overdose deaths. In the Journal de Montréal today, we can read there are used needles on the floor, there are terrible scenes to be witnessed, there are supervised consumption sites, some of which are a couple steps away from schools in Montreal. When will the Prime Minister reverse his radical policies which are causing deaths? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the opioid crisis is terrible.
Interesting. What a surprise.
It's occurring across the country. But what we need to fix this is not more conservative ideology. We need solutions based on compassion, healthcare, and science. We need evidence-based solutions. Now we will continue to work together with provinces and with communities to address this public health crisis. We will do so in a thorough and compassionate manner. That is what Canadians expect. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Minister is not worth the drugs and death. His extreme and radical drug policy has increased overdose deaths in British Columbia by 380%. In the year following his decriminalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in hospitals, transit buses, coffee shops, and parks where children play, there has been a record-smashing 2,500 deaths. Will the Prime Minister accept the BC NDP's demand to recriminalize those drugs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I just answered that question. What hasn't been answered by the Leader of the Opposition is why he chooses to continue to court extreme right nationalist groups like Diagolon. He refuses to denounce these extremists who don't believe Canadians should coexist with each other. Instead, they call for war and tell people to follow their instincts accordingly. The Leader of the Conservative Party is actively courting the support of groups with white nationalist views. It is disturbing, and he needs to stand up and apologize now.
Right now.
Trudeau's demanding apologies. How ridiculous, right?
Colleagues, so soon in question period, it is important that we try to control ourselves. I'll ask the honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton, please, to allow members to ask the questions and members to respond. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I always condemn extremism and racism, including from the guy who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, dressing up in hideous racist costumes so many times.
The honourable member, Leader of the Opposition, knows that to make an accusation directly at the character of a single person is not appropriate. And I'm going to ask all members to control
Bit of control, guys, on a Tuesday. Twisted Trudeau Tuesday. It's fun. In a way, it's kind of scary and sad, but it's fun.
I'll ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to rephrase this question and to start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, I will also condemn the extremism of a Prime Minister who gives hundreds of thousands of dollars of anti-racism money to a Jew hater who has proposed shooting Jews in the head. I condemn a Prime Minister who allows the IRGC, which murdered 55 Canadians, to remain legal. And I condemn a Prime Minister who allows open use of crack, heroin, meth, and weapons in hospital rooms that threaten nurses and on school buses next to children. Will the Prime Minister reverse his extremist policies?
Pretty big words. This is crazy.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite is showing us exactly what shameful, spineless leadership looks like.
Spineless? Oh my God, guys.
I'm going to ask the honourable member from Lethbridge if she has problems with the chair, that she should challenge the chair in a way. But as she knows, as the honourable member from Lethbridge knows, that by challenging the chair is against the rules of this House. I'll ask the honourable member to please to ask her to withdraw her remarks.
The chair is acting in a disgraceful manner.
I'm going to ask you, will you...
This is awesome, guys. He's going to press his button and think about it. Lord, this is... wow.
Ms. Harder, I have to name you for disregarding the authority of the chair. Pursuant to authority granted to me by Standing Order 11, I order you to withdraw from the House and from any participation by video conference for the remainder of this day's sitting.
Put the camera on him, come on. What kind of a director are going to have at CPAC?
Now back to the issue at hand.
Point of order? Nope. No point of order.
Mrs. Thomas, my apologies. Now back to the original point. I'm going to ask the Prime Minister to please, as I'd ask the Leader of the Opposition, you can start from again and to make sure that he does, to start his question, and to reframe it in a way that does not call into the character of an individual member of Parliament. The Honourable Prime Minister,
It's so early in the show, guys.
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite is showing us once again what he will do to try and earn votes through personal attacks. He shakes the hands of a leader of a white nationalist group, then goes to actively court the support of the group's members and thinks he can get away with it. This is a group that advocates for violence against US LGBTQI+ Canadians, against Hindus and Sikhs, against Muslims and Jews. Diagolon stands against everything we stand for as Canadians, and yet he will not denounce them or what they stand for. That is shameful, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that, like everything else he says, is false. He uses fear and falsehood and this latest distraction because he doesn't want to face the fact that he has become so extreme and radical that even the BC NDP is distancing themselves from his decriminalization of crack, heroin, meth, and other hard drugs in hospital rooms, causing nurses to have to stop breastfeeding their babies for fear that their contaminated air might end up in the breast milk of the baby. Why won't he ban these drugs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Still won't condemn these groups. Any leader that needs the support of a far-right white nationalist group to fundraise and get closer to power does not deserve elected office. This is a 19-year career politician who knows exactly what he's doing and thinks he can get away with it. It was a choice to pander to white nationalists, not an accident, and it is a choice to continue to not condemn them and condemn everything they stand for in his quest for votes.
Goodbye to 72. You're done.
I'm going to ask the honourable member for the second time from St. Albert, Edmonton, to please withhold his comments until he has the floor. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is a choice for him to implement extremist policies that have taken the lives of 2,500 British Columbians every single year. Since the NDP has asked him to reverse course on his and formerly their radical policy, 22 British Columbians have died of drug overdoses. But he continues to allow those drugs to kill the people in our hospitals and on our public transit. When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
No.
Do you hear Fergus? No.
That is not acceptable.
This is crazy,
There are a couple of things which are going on here today, which is not acceptable. And I ask all members, please, to keep themselves, to control themselves. I'm going to ask two things. One, I'm going to ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to withdraw that term, which is not considered parliamentary.
Mr. Speaker, I replace wacko with extremist. He is an
The honourable member to please. I'm going to ask the Leader of the Opposition once again to just withdraw that comment, please. And I'll invite the honourable member.
Don't back down, Poilievre. Get booted. Take it for the team.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition to please withdraw that comment and simply withdraw that comment.
Nope. Don't do it, Pierre. Take a walk.
I'll replace it with radical Baptist policy.
I am not asking to replace. I'm asking the honourable member to just simply withdraw.
Take it, Poilievre. Come on. Excited.
Mr. Speaker, I replace the word wacko with extremist.
Here it is. Oh my God, he presses his button because he needs to think? Come on. This is a wild episode, guys. This is the craziest that I think that I've seen it. Because somebody's been kicked out already, right? Now Poilievre's going to go. Look at Andrew Scheer down there. He's scheming, figuring out what to do. He used to be Speaker of the House, right?
I'm going to ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition one last time to please withdraw that comment and simply withdraw that comment.
I simply withdraw and replace with the aforementioned adjective.
Mr. Poilievre, I have to name you
Here you go, guys.
regarding the authority of the chair. Pursuant to the authority granted to me by Standing Order 11, I order you to withdraw from the House and from any participation by video conference for the remainder of this day's sitting.
Crazy. They don't put him on camera, though. Where is the director at CPAC? What a crappy job they're doing. Stuck on this. There's other things to show. And he presses his button. Oh my goodness, guys. Have you ever seen anything like this? I haven't. Like, not in the 8 or 9 months that I've been watching every day. I'm acting like this is entertaining, guys. This is scary and sad, but... Because stick with us, guys. I don't know if I should put some background music on or something. Old Greg Fergus looks like he's going to cry. What kind of body language are those twiddling his thumbs? Everybody left. Oh my God. The whole Conservative Party left. Oh my God, guys. I almost swore. What a day.
The second matter which I was going to bring up was the fact that I was hearing some catcalling from the far end of the House. I wasn't able to identify the person, but I'll ask all members to carry themselves in a way that is dignified for this House. The Right Honourable Prime Minister...
He's talking about dignity. I don't know about that.
The Leader of the Opposition wants to talk about extremism. Well, a week ago, he visited a Diagolon encampment. Diagolon hates that minorities in this country get the same protections as everyone else, and they are charter-protected rights. Just yesterday, a week after the Conservative leader sat down with...
I'll ask the honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes to please withdraw, to please only take the microphone when he is afforded the opportunity to ask a question. I'll ask the Right Honourable Prime Minister to continue. I'm going to ask the Right Honourable Prime Minister to finish his question. He has 15 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, the association of the Leader of the Opposition with Diagolon and their disdain for charter-protected rights brought them to just yesterday, a week after he sat down with Diagolon members, he gave a speech pledging to overturn the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the rights of Canadians and our justice system. That's dangerous.
L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker,
well.
I would like to congratulate you on your common sense today.
This is a crazy thing happening, guys.
Si vous voulez davantage.
If you would like more questions, well, we have many that we could ask. Mr. Speaker, the weapons buyback program, Phoenix pay system, emitting visas, GC strategies, McKinsey, the government's management is really chaotic. The government should not be interfering with Quebec's jurisdiction. They should simply limit themselves to issuing unconditional transfers. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, it is my responsibility to take care of all Canadians everywhere in Canada. I am the member for Papineau and I'm a proud Quebecer. So I will, of course, take care of Quebecers too. This is why we are working hand in hand with provinces from coast to coast to deliver services, care, and support that Canadians need in these difficult times. We will continue to be here to invest in communities, to invest in Canadians, and to invest in their futures. We will do so by working with provinces and municipalities. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Hand in hand with provinces, eh? Now, the Conservatives have been making statements that put them on par with Pinocchio, but now they're voting with the Liberals. The Conservatives now also want to interfere with provincial jurisdiction. All premiers unanimously made a request. But against all of those premiers, the Liberals and the Conservatives have voted down a motion calling for respect of provincial jurisdiction. So if the Liberals and Conservatives really care about Quebec, then I welcome them to read our policies. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc's policies seek to pick fights between Quebec and Ottawa. On this side of the House, we're investing in Quebecers' futures. We're investing in families, seniors. We're investing in dental care. In fact, as of tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, seniors in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada will have advantages. We're investing to increase daycare spots. We're investing in green technology and a more prosperous future for all. We're here to work together, not to fight, and we will continue on that track. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, what a day today. I'm glad that those remaining are adults. The adults are still here in the room. 25% of Quebecers are unable to live with dignity. That's a staggering number. That's 2 million people.
I think he just called Poilievre,
25% of Quebecers are living on less than the minimum income required to live a reasonably decent life. They're too squeezed to afford the goods and services they need. Meanwhile, the Liberals are giving gifts to big oil. Everything costs more. Housing has become insanely expensive. Housing is the single biggest expense for families. So when are the Liberals going to build housing that Quebecers can afford? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that's exactly why in our recent budget, we have prioritized creating equal opportunities for all generations. A huge chunk of the investments in Budget 2024 are investments in housing, affordable housing. We wish to ensure that young people, Millennials and Generation Z, will have a future in which they can buy a home, in which they can pay rent, and pay rent such that their credit rating will increase so that they can eventually start paying a mortgage. We're investing more than anyone before us.
Speaker, Canadians deserve to retire with dignity, and they can with the world-renowned Canada Pension Plan. But Danielle Smith is trying to pull Alberta out of the CPP, and the Conservative leader has spent his entire career attacking workers' pensions while he benefits from a public pension himself. New Democrats are fighting back. Today I tabled a bill that will protect the CPP from Conservatives and give Canadians and Albertans a say in the future of their CPP. Will the Liberals support my bill, or will they stand with the cut-and-gut Conservatives?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're pleased to see the NDP joining us in the fight to protect the Canada Pension Plan. Actually, one of the very first things we did in government about 6 months in was strengthen the Canada Pension Plan for future generations. We will continue to stand against Conservatives who for decades have been railing against the Canada Pension Plan, and indeed the plan by Alberta to dismantle the Canada Pension Plan, to put at risk the pensions of millions of Albertan seniors, is absolutely irresponsible, and we will continue to stand in defense of the Canada Pension Plan and look forward to standing with all members in this House in doing just that. Hear, hear.
What is he pressing his button for now? All the Conservatives are gone, like the whole side. Good. What a thing to have happen, guys. Not good. Again, I'm not cheering for the downfall of our country or anything, but like this is maybe going to get some attention.
C'est une journée exceptionnelle.
Canadians need to know this stuff is going on.
Today is a very unique day. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Prime Minister has left. He's no longer with us here on this Tuesday. Now, the Prime Minister said that he's working hand in hand with provinces. He insisted that he wants to ensure that everyone receives good services from the Government of Canada, and that he wants that for all Canadians. Well, there are some services which are under provincial jurisdiction. So, am I right in understanding that the Prime Minister feels that when provinces deliver services, they are lower quality than when Ottawa delivers them? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I'm worried for my Bloc Québécois friends. I hardly recognize them anymore. They have always said that housing is important. They always say that housing is important. The Conservatives vote against it, and then the Bloc votes against it. The Conservatives say to vote against climate change. The Bloc sometimes votes against too, but I'm worried. This sovereigntist party, they are following advice from the Conservatives, and so they're in fact losing their own sovereignty. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I understand that there's been less preparation, but yesterday, the Conservatives, the Liberals, and even the NDP, I say even because it's one and the same, they all voted down a Bloc Québécois amendment. The amendment accepted the budget. We're team players, but all we were calling for was respect for provincial jurisdiction. But all these federalists got together and voted against the Bloc Québécois. How does the minister feel about that? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc has failed Quebecers. They promised Quebecers that they would support housing, but they voted against housing. They said to Quebecers that they would support fighting climate change. They vote against it. We try to help young people. They vote with the Conservatives. They vote against what we're doing. So does the Bloc Québécois realize that they are, in fact, becoming the separatist wing of the Conservative Party? The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. Quebec has just announced $603 million to stop the decline of the French language. Most of the money will go towards French language training for temporary foreign workers. This is good news for the vitality of the French language, but this alone will not be enough. Why not? Because the majority of foreign workers are entirely under the jurisdiction of the federal government through the International Mobility Program. And the federal government has no language requirements. So, given that the Liberals have acknowledged the decline of the French language, they too must do their part. Will the government heed Quebec's request and add French language requirements for foreign workers under its jurisdiction? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We, of course, support French language training. We invested $5.4 billion in Quebec since 2015 for French language training, and things are working well. The Bloc is often viewed as a party that picks fights, but I would like to highlight the contribution of the member across the way. He has supported the fact that family members of temporary residents can stay longer. The government of Quebec called for that, and we worked together with the Bloc Québécois to ensure that this would be possible.
Vancouver East.
Priority processing for the lifeboat scheme for Hong Kongers has gone from 6 months to 21. Processing delays for their PR application means their work permit and study permit are going to expire. The medical coverage will end. Dependent children will no longer be able to access education. Hong Kongers will be sent back to face an escalation of arbitrary detentions and arrests because of the draconian Safeguarding National Security Bill. Will the Minister resume the 6-month priority processing average for Hong Kongers and automatically renew their work and study permit as they wait?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to stand with the people of Hong Kong. We will work on processing times. We continue to work with people who seek refuge in Canada, and will continue to do so. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Timmins, James Bay.
For decades, people in James Bay have struggled to overcome systemically racist underfunding of health services. Every region deserves proper hospital services. And we're finally on the verge of having a proper hospital built in the Winnebago Health region. But now at the 11th hour, the Liberals have walked away. I mean, heck, even Doug Ford is bringing the province to the table. So will the minister explain why she made the health authority jump through so many hoops only to tell them that the Liberals had no intention of funding this badly needed project?
First of all, let me...
Just 1 minute. I'd like to just apologize to the member from Timmins James Bay. I might have reduced the time of his question. We got the timing wrong here on the clock. I just want to make sure if the honourable member can please start again and start his question from the top, just to make sure that he has his full question. The honourable member from Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For decades, people in James Bay have struggled to overcome systemically racist underfunding of health services. Every region deserves a proper hospital, and we're finally on the verge of having a proper hospital built in the Winnebago Health region. But now at the 11th hour, the Liberals have walked away. I mean, heck, even Doug Ford is bringing the province to the table. So will the minister explain why she made the Health Authority jump through so many hoops only to tell them that the Liberals have no intention of funding this badly needed project?
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Of advocacy, and let me reassure him that I spoke with Grand Chief Fiddler just last week about this very project. We're working with the province and with the region to make sure that everyone can access quality health care no matter where they live.
From Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, disinformation, extremism, and violent hate are on the rise around the world, including here at home. Standing up to far-right extremism is something that I know this government takes very seriously. But it is shameful that the Leader of the Opposition entertained and posed for photos with organizations our national security agencies call a far-right extreme group rooted in white nationalism that promote hate and violence. Can the government please tell this House how important it is that these far-right extreme groups be condemned and addressed for the real threat that they are?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Diversity.
Mr. Speaker, while we're investing $273 million towards Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate in this budget, the Leader of the official opposition is encouraging hate as he cozies up to far-right white extremist supporters.
The Speaker has made rulings about this in terms of lending intentions to honourable members in this House. So I'll ask the Honourable Minister to, with about 24 seconds left on the clock, to please correct her statement in a way that is respectful of all members.
Mr. Speaker, as a government, we have been very deliberate about choices to be inclusive, while the Leader of the Opposition is making it a very deliberate choice in courting to far-right extremists. This is, Mr. Speaker, extremely reckless, it's dangerous, and he owes Canadians an apology, and he needs to denounce the closing up that he's doing with these groups.
Fergus has no backbone, guys.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quebec will not reach its goals in French language training if there are more and more people arriving. We can't take in 54% of all asylum seekers of Canada. It's a matter of social justice for the people who arrive. More people to house and to educate and sometimes to feed. But it's also about integration in Quebec society because we have a duty to provide these people with all the tools they need to succeed. Will the minister finally announce a fair breakdown of asylum seekers between Quebec and the provinces? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, sometimes I wonder if the Bloc is clear on what is happening. Quebec is doing more than its fair share, but 54% is an exaggerated number if we look at all the humanitarian aspects. It's really 25%. Yes, Quebec is doing more. There needs to be collaboration with the Government of Canada, but we need to work together. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. We are ready to welcome people. We won't be able to fight the decline in the French language if the federal government is working in the opposite direction. We have 2/3 of temporary residents coming in. The federal government is not taking on its responsibility in French language training. Ottawa is responsible for the skyrocketing needs of French language training in Quebec, and it's doing nothing. The Liberals repeat over and over that more needs to be done to protect French. So why do they refuse to do more to protect French? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. It's very clear, Mr. Speaker, we will be there for Quebec to do more to support French in Quebec. $54 billion is not nothing. It's what we're contributing, what we've contributed since 2015. But I could ask a question to the member opposite. Does he think we should bring in more asylum seekers from Haiti? Would he accept more in Quebec? The Honourable Member for Madawaska-Restigouche. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's in this more civilized parliamentary context that I announced that Budget 2024 presents a generational plan to build more housing for Canadians. We already know that those in the skilled trades will be the key to the success of building these millions of homes. Since the Canada's Building Unions Trade meeting, it's happening now in the National Capital Region. Can the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages tell us what our government is doing to ensure that Canada has the workforce it needs to get the job done throughout the country? The Honourable Member of Employment and Workforce Development. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Honourable Member for this question. Yesterday, I was at the Canada Buildings Trades Unions conference to discuss with people how we will address the housing crisis in Canada. Budget 2024 sets out money to fund training and apprenticeships for workers from coast to coast so they can build homes for the next decades. Mr. Speaker, the skilled trades will drive this effort. We will guarantee they have everything they need to get the job done. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, La Presse recently informed us of the existence of the obsolete or surplus goods program of the Border Services Agency. Basically, this program aims to give money to businesses that throw out their excess merchandise. We're talking about non-perishable merchandise. For example, let's say I have a jeans business. I import a new type and I end up with out-of-date, unsold jeans. I have two choices. If I throw them out in the garbage, Ottawa reimburses me for the customs charges. But if I donate them to a charity, I don't get a cent. What an invitation to waste. Who in Ottawa thinks that this is a good idea? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague. I was not aware of a particular case. If he asks us if we're in favor of that type of waste, I think, his opinion. The answer, of course, is no. I will be pleased to speak to the Border Services Agency to see if it's possible to find another solution. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Well, today, the level of questions has increased. I'm not sure about the answers. The Border Services Agency has reimbursed businesses over $20 million for throwing out their merchandise after making it unusable. At a time when food banks are serving more people than ever because times are tough, Ottawa is funding waste at the expense of social solidarity. It doesn't make sense. Will the Minister of Public Safety review this very bad program which penalizes generosity and encourages waste? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we will absolutely review the facts that my honourable colleague has put forward because I, of course, share his concern in the face of this situation. I will be pleased to follow up with the agency, the Border Services Agency. I look forward to doing so.
The Honourable Member from Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, April is Cancer Awareness Month. Though the month is ending, the need for cancer awareness and education continues. According to the Canadian Cancer Society, 2 out of 5 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. In 2023 alone, an estimated 239,000 Canadians were newly diagnosed with cancer. Can the Minister of Health update this House on what our government is doing to support Canadians impacted by cancer?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Scarborough Agincourt for her continued advocacy. She knows all too well, as do I and every member of this House, that so few of us get to make it through this life and not be touched by cancer, and that it is an imperative that we do all that we can. And I want to take a moment to recognize the Canadian Cancer Society, Breast Cancer Canada, and all those that work tirelessly to advocate. We put $1 billion over the last 5 years to work through breakthroughs in science and to improve how we prevent and treat cancer. We're taking critical action in prevention. Together, we can see an end to cancer, and I thank that for the time to speak, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, the community of Port Renfrew in my riding relies on recreational fishing as the major economic driver in the region, bringing in an estimated $26 million per season. But the Liberals plan to end that important economic pathway and are failing to provide credible data to justify the fishing closures. This move will harm the local economy and devastate the local community, including the Pacheedaht First Nation. This is shameful. Why are the Liberals putting Port Renfrew's economy at risk with these ill-informed and punitive fishing closures?
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member opposite. It was just a couple of weeks ago, I was in BC talking to a lot of First Nations communities on a whole host of topics that are important to them and important to their communities. I know this one is equally important in terms of recreational fishing from a food and ceremonial perspective, cultural perspective, and an economic perspective. And I will set some time aside to discuss the item with the member opposite very soon. Thank you.
Good job, Mike. Good job, Mike.
The honourable member from Churchill, Kiwatanuk, Aski.
Mr. Speaker, today was the final day for most Canadians to file their taxes, and thanks to NDP pressure, the wealthy will be paying somewhat more. Unlike the Conservative leader who, while in government, gave $60 billion to corporations, New Democrats would rather fund key public services like dental and pharmacare. As usual, the Liberals continue to ignore the need for serious tax fairness at a time of rampant corporate greed. We still use a system where wealthy corporations can get out of paying $30 billion in taxes in 1 year. Does this government have an idea how much money the wealthiest Canadians will deprive Canada of this year?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question. This budget is about fairness for every generation. It is about making the essential investments in housing, in affordability, in economic growth. And we agree with the idea behind the question that the way to finance those investments is to ask those who are doing the best in our society to contribute a little bit more. That's why in the budget we are proposing to increase the capital gains inclusion rate. We hope all members will support that.
Hear, hear.
Colleagues, this brings to the end of the questions which are, please listen carefully. This brings to the end of the questions which were indicated by the various whips in the House. Now we have question period which will continue on for another 5 minutes, and so we're going to other members who will rise, keeping all proportion in compte. Alors, je vois que
I see the honourable member for Kitchener Centre is on his feet, but unfortunately today there is no allocation for independent members today. It'll be based on the whole week. So I recognize the member for Avignon-Lamitis-Matapédia. The government has decided once again to postpone
guys, this is boring. I'm just skipping out.
assault
this is a weird
weapons buyback program. Once again, Ottawa was neglectful in planning the program, and the Liberals have decided to postpone it all to 2025. And as a result, it'll be the Conservatives.
So we will just get right here, and we're jumping into this, guys, right away. This is Poilievre's speech from this morning. Really interesting piece. If you haven't seen it already, here's a lot of Poilievre. We'll get that going right away. Here we are.
All right, thank you for your indulgence. We're ready to resume the agenda. And I'd like to introduce the next
You'll like
person
this one,
who's going to
Sheila.
introduce
It's got
our next
Kyle
speaker.
Seaback,
It's a
our
real
guy.
pleasure for me to introduce Kyle Seaback, who's the MP for Dufferin-Caledon in Ontario. and he's recently been appointed to the role of Opposition Critic for Labour. Please join me in welcoming Kyle Seebeck, who will welcome our next speaker.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here today. I want to just add one quick thing before I introduce our guest. I am the proud father of a son who is in the construction building, who is union proud. His life has been made remarkably better since he got a job and started working with a union. It's a remarkable thing that I've witnessed myself personally. I now just want to introduce Pierre Poilievre. You know him. He is the leader of Canada's Common Sense Conservatives. He grew up as the adopted son of 2 school teachers. His wife, Anna, came to Canada as a refugee from Venezuela. Canada made and kept them a promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, and that hard work pays off. Pierre's mission is actually to restore Canada's promise. Powerful paychecks that buy affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. And he has a common sense plan. You may have heard it. He's going to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. He wants to bring back the country that we all know and love. Let's give a warm welcome to the leader of Canada's Common Sense Conservatives and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you very much, Sean, to, first of all, my new Shadow Minister of Labour, who is working hard on behalf of all of us, and thanks to Sean Strickland for hosting me. But most of all, thanks to all of you who either build the country or fight for the people who build the country. You're the ones who handle the grievances, negotiate the wages, find the jobs, provide the skills, and train the future. But before I get into my common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, I just want to share some staggering arithmetic. So I checked today the Government of Canada Job Bank for the average median wage for the carpenter, not code. They say it's $30 an hour. But let's say they have a great union local and they've been able to negotiate $40 an hour. $40 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, works out to $80,000. According to any calculation at online mortgage calculator, to buy the average home in Canada today, you need $142,000. So that arithmetic is very simple. The carpenter who builds the home cannot afford to buy the home. And I saw this not as a statistic, but as a real-life story when I was in a Northern Ontario Tim Hortons last summer and literally met a young carpenter who said he lives in his car because his rent rose faster than his income and he couldn't afford to pay it, and so he's living in a parking lot. That right there summarizes everything that has happened in our economy after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, who is not worth the cost. And I understand Mr. Trudeau was here yesterday and blaming the world for how badly he's performed as Prime Minister. It sounds like it was more of a therapy session than it was a policy presentation. He was talking about how the world has made it impossible for him to keep his promise to the middle class. Remember the famous promise that he was going to help the middle class and those working hard to join it? Remember, he made that promise when the average rent in Canada was $950. When the average home cost just over $400,000. Well, 9 years later, housing costs have doubled. Half of Canadians are buying food that is past its best before date. A fifth of Canadians say their health has diminished because they're eating rotten or low-quality food. We did not have these problems before Justin Trudeau. We did not have 2 million people lined up at food banks. We did not have 8,000 joining the Facebook group called the Dumpster Diving Network. This is a group of Canadians who share tips on how to find a meal in a garbage can. We didn't have 28 dead bodies in coolers outside of the St. John's Hospital next to a dumpster because their family members cannot afford a burial or a cremation, and so they've asked the hospital to just refrigerate the bodies until they can save up enough money to say goodbye to their father, mother, aunt, or uncle. That did not happen before Justin Trudeau. But so you can imagine, on the stage yesterday, his role was not to brag about all that he's achieved in a decade, but to make excuses. But I'm here to tell you, first and foremost, that these mistakes and these excuses don't cut it, because the rest of the world is not living through the misery that he has caused here at home. For example, the rest of the world is not paying Justin Trudeau's carbon tax or anywhere close to it. We now have the second highest carbon tax in the developed world.
Thanks, Kirk.
We have the second highest annual death rate associated with opioid overdose among the 11 countries that the Commonwealth Fund has studied. Only the U.S. is worse. We have worse housing affordability than all but one of the nearly 40 OECD countries. Incomes in Canada, housing costs in Canada have risen 40% faster than incomes. That is the biggest gap of any G7 country and the second worst in the entire OECD. After 9 years of Trudeau, we have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on, we spend the most money on residential construction, and we have by far the most mortgage debt as a share of our GDP. This decade, the OECD says that Canada has had the worst economic growth in that group of nations, and they project we will have the worst economic growth for the next 3 decades. Canada is one of only 8 countries in the OECD where average real incomes today are lower than before the pandemic as inflation has outpaced nominal income growth. I repeat, we cannot use the dog ate our homework excuse of COVID for that, because most of the advanced countries have seen incomes outpace inflation since the pandemic, even though here in Canada we have not. And Canada is expected to rank dead last among OECD countries for growth in labor productivity over most of the next 40 years. That is his record put up against other countries. So no, it is not acceptable to simply blame the rest of the world for problems that are made in Canada. And furthermore, it's worth recognizing that while most Canadians are suffering, it is the working class that is suffering the most. The working class has been turned into the working poor. The policies of Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Singh are disproportionately bad for wage earners. Let me tell you why. When the government runs deficits, and it can't fund those deficits through borrowing alone, they create more cash. So in the last 3 years, the money supply in Canada has grown from $1.8 trillion to about $2.4 trillion. Now, that is a 32% increase in the number of coins, bills, and bank deposits. The economy, meanwhile, grew by about 4%. So the cash is growing 8 times faster than the stuff that cash buys. And when that happens, the cash bids up the price. If you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's a buck an apple. You double the number of dollars in the economy to 20 and you still have only 10 apples, well, you're not twice as rich, it's just that each apple costs twice as much. So now it's $2 an apple. That is inflation, or as I call it, just inflation. But the reality is, inflation doesn't affect everybody equally. There's always been the tension, and the union movement has been at the forefront of fighting for justice in that tension between capital and labor. Capital and labor. Who benefits and who loses from inflation? Well, people with a lot of capital do okay. Why? Because their capital goes up with inflation. If you have speculative land holdings, jewelry, fancy wines, arts, stocks, and the government causes inflation, well, your assets are bid up and you get richer. And that's one of the reasons why wealth is concentrating in Canada today, because those who have inflation-proof or inflation-positive assets are getting richer every single day. But those people who live off their wages, well, their purchasing power goes down. They suffer a real pay cut. And that is what has happened to our working class. You represent the wage earners and the future pensioners. Their wages and pensions have lost purchasing power. Meanwhile, big government and big business and big capital has gotten rich by the inflationary policies of government. It is a transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts. And so, meanwhile, government bureaucracy blocks home building, which bids out housing costs. Again, if you own a mansion on a hill somewhere, your net worth has gone up. But if you're a working-class kid doing an apprenticeship in one of the union training halls who dreams one day of owning a home, well, the ladder has just been lifted up the castle wall, and you'll never be able to climb that ladder because it's out of reach. So it is the working poor, the working class, and what was called 9 years ago the middle class, who have suffered the most under NDP and Liberal policies. The good news is, life was not like this before this NDP Liberal government, and it won't be like this after they're gone. We're going to bring home the Canada we know and love with a common sense plan that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Let me start with axing the tax. Of course, your members are disproportionately harmed by the carbon tax and related policies because they have to drive trucks. It's not possible to, especially in rural and remote communities, and I know you represent many of those communities. Those folks who drive trucks in order to take their tools to job sites pay a disproportionately high price for the carbon tax. They are among the 60% of Canadian families who pay more in taxes than they get back in rebates. And then their employers have to pay that tax, which forces them to reduce wages and pass on the losses to their wage-earning workers. By a common-sense conservative government will axe the tax to lower the cost of gas, heat, and groceries and ensure that the purchasing power of the working people is enhanced. Further to that point, we will fix the budget. The inflationary spending I described is the result, all the inflation I just described is actually only the symptom. The disease is overspending. Government spending drives deficits, taxes, and inflationary money printing. We're going to use a common sense principle that your members and your union halls use every single day to run your finances. It's called the dollar for dollar rule. My government will legislate a rule that every time we bring in $1 new of spending, we must find $1 of savings to pay for it. That will require we go into our bureaucratic departments and root out waste and mismanagement to optimize use of money. If we want to spend more here, we have to spend less there, or we have to get a bargain here and there. That's how seniors, single moms, and small businesses run their finances. It's how I will run my government. We will obviously get rid of waste like the $35 billion infrastructure bank that doesn't complete infrastructure projects, the $60 million ArriveCan app, the $1 billion so-called Green Fund, 15% of which has already been known to be misappropriated. We'll cut back on foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and multinational bureaucracies and bring that money home to put it into funding our military. We will optimize the use of our dollars so that we can balance the budget and the money printing and bring down inflation and interest rates. In addition to fixing the budget, we're going to build the homes. You're the ones who will actually build the homes, actually, the truth be told. But we're the ones that need to get out of the way to let you do it. Canada, as I said at the outset, has the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. We spend 9% of our GDP on residential construction, which is twice the OECD average, twice what they spend in the States. We have the most mortgage debt as a share of GDP. And we have by far the most land and lumber per capita. So how is it that we have the fewest homes? The answer is that we have the absolute worst bureaucracy. We have the second slowest building permits in the OECD. This might seem like a nuisance. It's not a nuisance. It is a massive cost. C.D. Howe calculates that in Vancouver, the cost of permits, that is to include the charges, the fees, the delays, the rezoning, the consultants, the lawyers, adds up to $1.3 million for every newly built home. In Toronto, it's $350,000. The GTA municipalities have hiked their development charges 900%. Winnipeg blocked 2,000 homes next to a transit station built for those homes. Montreal has blocked 25,000 homes in the last 7 years, according to the Montreal Economic Institute. All of that is passed on to only two people: the person who builds the home and the person who buys the home. Let's be honest, the big developers don't pay any of it. They pass it all on. And if the cost gets too high to make it profitable, they go build somewhere else. But your members and young working class home buyers can't simply move to Florida or Singapore. They have to find a home in Barrie. And so they're the ones that are paying the full price. I am no longer going to give federal dollars to local bureaucracies to block home building. Rather, I'm going to reform the entire infrastructure transfer to municipalities to link the dollars they get to the homes that are allowed to be built. They will be required to free up land, speed up permit, and reduce development charges as a condition of getting federal funds. We'll require they permit 15% more housing completions per year to get the funds. If they beat the target, they'll get a bonus. If they miss the target, they'll pay a fine. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. I'll require every federally funded transit station be pre-permitted for high-density housing all around and even on top before the municipality will get the money. They will have to bridge finance, and I will not send them the check until there are apartments around those transit stations so our youth and seniors can live next to bus and trains. And we will back the trades because we need more boots, not more suits. My common sense plan will bring in a full write-off for the cost of food, transportation, and accommodation so that your members can move from one job site to another. Today, a CEO can write off the cost of his private jet, but a pipe fitter who travels from Timmins to Fort Mac to do a job can only write up $4 grand, even if he has to do 20 flights a year. That is insane. And yesterday, we had the minister come before you and ask you to thank him because he's going to consider looking at, studying the Conservative private members' bill to bring tax fairness for traveling trade workers. Enough consideration. That minister is allowing CEOs the write-off. It's time to allow the workers the same write-off, and common sense Conservatives will adopt the bill from Chris Lewis, Conservative from Windsor, C241, to let our tradespeople write off those costs. This builds on other pro-worker, yes, thank you. This builds on other pro-worker policies that we have supported since my leadership. A Conservative bill from Sarnia MP, Marilyn Gladue, which puts pensions to the front of the line in the event of bankruptcy so that the bondholders and other financial speculators do not get paid before pensioners when a large employer goes bankrupt. The liquidated assets of the company go first and foremost to fully funding the pension of the workers and keeping the promise to them. I'm proud that that bill passed the House of Commons and the Senate and is now law so that pensions are safe. Now, I know that in this room you already have a lot of your unions run great pension programs, and I congratulate you for investing wisely in your workers' future. We also voted again in favor of the anti-scab legislation in recognition that our working people have the right to bargain and fight for wage increases that they need in order to keep up with the galloping inflation that has ripped them off. We will also put an end to the abuse in the temporary foreign worker program. Yesterday, now I don't have to actually criticize the government for this, because yesterday, I'm told before you that Mr. Trudeau said the temporary foreign workers program was out of control. Geez, if only he knew somebody who could do something about that. If only he could find out who's been in charge for the last 9 years, during which time the number of temporary foreign workers has tripled from 60,000 in 2015 to 188,000 last year. Tripled. While we still have trades workers who can't find jobs, he brings in temporary foreign workers in order to allow employers to bid down wages and undercut Canadians. This is outrageous. When I was employment minister, we cut back on temporary foreign workers because we saw in the data exactly what the big corporations were doing. They were abusing the program to drive down wages. In a free market, you have a natural tension between work and wages, where the employer has to bid up wages in order to attract the best workforce. But that free market doesn't exist if he can simply go outside of Canada and replace available Canadian workers with temporary foreign workers from lower wage countries who are willing to accept less money and much abuse. And that abuse has run rampant under Justin Trudeau, and it's gotten to the point where we're even using tax dollars to subsidize temporary foreign workers and other foreign workers coming to our country, taking jobs that Canadians could be doing. We see this with the Nexstar plant in Windsor, where the job descriptions for people say that they have to have a fluency in Korean. And this is not just for highly specialized work related to the setup of the plant. It is for jobs that can, like forklift operator, that Canadians can and do. And this is at a time when your members are in Windsor are out of work. My government policy will be very simple. There will be no tax dollars to subsidize foreign workers. Our tax dollars are for our workers in this country, period. I also want to address the larger foreign worker problem that is invisible, and it is the fact that we are importing goods and services from countries that we could be producing here at home. So let's stay on the theme of electric cars. Canada produces little to no lithium. In 2022, we produced no lithium, even though we have about the 6th biggest reserves on Earth. So when you see people driving around in Teslas, feeling good about all they've done for the environment, the lithium in that battery was refined in China, probably mined in South America, rather than coming out of mines here in Canada, even though we have the stuff right beneath our feet. Why? Because we have the 2nd slowest building permits in the OECD. It takes 19 years to go from concept to shovel in the ground for a mine. 19 years. This does nothing for the environment. What do we learn about the environment in years 16, 17, and 18 of the study that we could not have learned in year 1 and 2? That is the question. Well, what we're learning is that we're outsourcing our economic future and taking jobs away from tradespeople who could be mining these minerals. In Northern Ontario, we have what should be the Ring of Fire, still not operational. I talked to the First Nations who want the project to get going. I said, is the shovel in the ground? They say the snow shovel is in the ground. Why? Because they've been waiting 5 years for a permit for a highway to get to the future mines. 5 years for a highway permit. This is insane. We need to speed up our permitting. I will repeal the unconstitutional law, Bill C-69, and replace it with a law that will streamline approvals, protect the environment, consult First Nations, but get mines and other major resource projects approved in 18 months, not 18 years. We will build natural gas liquefaction plants, pipelines. We will use responsibly our oil sands. We will approve nuclear facilities to power our grid with clean, green, Canadian nuclear power using Saskatchewan uranium, Ontario know-how, and your trades workers from right across this country, because they are the best in the world. We're going to bring home our money to this country, turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. And speaking of bringing home to our country, we want to bring home safety to our communities. Because after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, we have crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. We have shooting deaths that are up over 100% in just a decade. And of course, your members are the victims of these crimes. That is the result of the catch and release criminal justice system that Trudeau has given us, so that the same 40 offenders had to be arrested 6,000 times in Vancouver. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. My common sense plan would make repeat offenders ineligible for bail, parole, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail, jail, not bail. We will bring in treatment and recovery services rather than decriminalized and tax subsidized hard drugs, so that we can bring our loved ones home drug-free. And finally, we will respect your right to lawfully use your firearms. The Prime Minister believes that we need to ban hunting rifles. He wants to ban your hunting rifle. He wants to ban all civilian firearms ownership. Bill C-21 plus 300 pages of hunting rifles that he tried to amend out of existence in that law, and with the support of the NDP, wants to take away the ability of Canadian trades workers to enjoy the outdoors and hunting on the weekends. My friends, I'm interested in protecting Canadians from criminals, not turkeys from hunters. So I will be repealing C-21. I will protect your right to hunt and sport shoot. And I will put the saved money into rebuilding border security and rebuilding the security at our ports to scan the shipping containers so that we can stop criminals from taking stolen cars out and bringing illegal drugs and guns in. That is how we will make our streets safe from illegal firearms. We're going to put you back in charge of your life. You know, yesterday the Labour Minister talked about the pretender versus the real man. Funny, as he supports a guy who was literally an actor as the Prime Minister, someone who pretended he would do great things for the middle class but has now deprived them of home ownership and food. And contrasts this against the so-called real man. Well, if we want to idealize the real man or the real woman, it is not any politician. It is the people you represent, the people who literally build this nation with their hands, the common people. And I want to be your champion. I don't want to run your life. I don't want to decide on your behalf. I don't believe I have any special virtue or wisdom to lord over the population. I want a smaller government with bigger citizens, with free speech so you can decide what you see and say, with economic freedom so your members and the entrepreneurs who employ them keep more of what they earn, where we speed up and lower the cost of getting things done so that you can swing the hammers, turn the wrenches, and use the natural genius and earn skills to build a better life for yourselves and your families. I want to put you back in charge of your life here in Canada, the freest country on earth, built by the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home, Let's bring it home. Thank you very much.
Speaker, as I informed your office earlier this morning.
What we're going to do right now is give our friend Kirk a call on Facebook, see if we can get that to work for us. And we'll just do a quick wrap up. We have a whole bunch of new people. N1, welcome to the group. Thank you for subscribing. Alice, Heidi. So we'll see if we can catch Kirk here. But there's a lot of new people in the room. I'd like to say hello to everybody. Welcome to the channel and the chat, guys. It's fun. So there we go. We've got our guy Kirk with us right here.
Hello.
Hello. So what did you think of that, Kirk? That was a pretty crazy day in Parliament.
Freaking amazing. I've never, ever, ever seen that happen before. And I've been watching a little bit longer than you, but it was epic.
It was epic. I was cheering for Poilievre. I was like, don't back down. Don't take it back. Take the walk. I wasn't thinking that the rest of the Conservatives were going to bail.
Well, I was hoping that was going to happen.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that before, and like again to catch a moment like that live, that's just exciting, right? Like,
you can't pay money and see better.
And like how much attention, negative attention now is going to be brought to like, especially Greg Fergus, like. The reason I cut the show early is because right now I need to go and do a story on what just happened.
Oh, absolutely. This has got to be pushed out there. Not very many people, everybody's working. They haven't got a clue. They may be on mainstream media, see a peek of it, but nothing like what we're airing today.
It'll be interesting to see, Kirk, what mainstream media actually puts out there and their angle on it, because we saw that happen live and Trudeau was being just as bad as Poilievre, like with the, and he gets a special treatment, and then Poilievre would not back down. I did it like that part for sure. And the fact that the Conservatives had his back and they left the House of Commons, pretty interesting.
That's the team.
Yep, for sure. But we are going to wrap it up because I'm going to run and do this other story. Do you think we got everybody? There was a lot of new people in the room. Oh, I see somebody, Marie Perrin, just came in the room. Hello, Janet Nunn.
Hello.
There's so many people that, new people. Night Owl, what's up? If we missed anybody, I think Kirk and I, Sheila, we're trying to catch everybody in the chat. Sometimes we'll miss somebody. We don't mean it's nothing like that. And what a fun, interesting day. I do have to run to go make this other story, though.
Oh.
Right about what just happened.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Push it out. Push it out.
All right, gang.
I would like to thank everybody in the chat. It's been just an absolute blast. What a great gang.
No, it is a great gang, Kirk, and well, you're one of the leaders of the pack, bud. Yeah.
Not me.
Anyways, man, we are going to run. Thank you so much for your help. That's it. Just like to say hello to everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have more videos coming out tonight. And that is it. Stay tuned. It should be an interesting, wild Wednesday. Should be pretty wacky. That was the word he was using, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was. So Wacky Wednesday's coming tomorrow. I can see the thumbnail already. So we're going to get going,
How
Kirk.
long was... Oh. Hey, one thing. How long was Pierre punted for? Just the day?
Yeah, it's just the day.
Oh, okay.
He was the second person kicked out, right? They booted harder before that. And, right, they didn't show it on camera, but you could see Fergus, and he did kick her out. So
I was wondering who got punted.
yeah, it was harder. And I don't understand why the director of CPAC wouldn't show what was happening, because they have the cameras there. They could have done that, but they didn't. I don't know why.